Afternoon. Pleasure to be with you. I had a video, but they've seen the other ones, so they said I had to come up with just a picture. So that's my picture. That's retail of the future. I'm told to talk to you about retail of the future. What can you see about that picture? Number one, it's women. Retail's all about women. Number two, it involves technology. This is an unposed picture, by the way, taken a couple of weeks ago, one of our villages. Number three, it's clearly international if that picture took place outside of China. It could have been at Bicester Village. Number four, it's a defined, high quality, if you look at the details, it doesn't feel like a mall anyway. It doesn't even feel like a Gives and Hawkes store. And number five, even though it's the future of fashion, the only clothes you see are the ones the women are wearing. So retail is shifting. It's in transition right now. I just came from a lunch full of the old economy. Everyone had a tie on. You guys only one or two ties. Gives and Hawkes had ties. And I'm going to talk to you about retail as I think of it, and use a few words that are not normally, a few terms that are not normally found in retail. For example, distributed trust. What's the ultimate test of distributed trust? It's word of mouth. It's how people decide your brand, your product proposition, your product has authenticity, has purpose. How about friction? What's a low-friction transaction? In a store, online. Transparency. We want to know what we want to know immediately. If it even takes a long time to load, we're not interested. If the video content lasts more than a minute and a half, we're not interested. And evidence. Evidence-based. We live in an evidence-based world. It starts with Bill Gates. It's all about proof and solutionism. So when these things come together in a physical format, in a physical location, that starts to define what the future of retail looks like. Because retail has already polarized between efficiency, which is, in the end, defined pure, in its most pure form, by the internet, and experience. And the confusing thing about experience is it's all based on that woman, and what she finds acceptable or even interesting and exciting changes rapidly. The complexity, the nuance, the sophistication, it's a moving target. And if you're a retailer, your world looks a bit strange right now. Beyond the momentary flows of temperature. I haven't seen a lot of people buying winter coats this autumn because it's been so hot. On the other hand, in Buffalo, New York, earlier this week, there were 7 feet of snow in early November. So temperature, politics, economy. But in the end, actually, retail is shifting right now. Women's ready-to-wear is not understandable. The patterns are not understandable. You talk to the brands, they like to think they know what's going to happen next. They can't tell you if you speak to them privately. And is that a tipping point because of technology, because of changing behavior? At this lunch with all the ties, they were speaking somewhat despairingly of the millennials. Well, we think of the millennials as the future, so there's this inconsistency. But retail is about the future, and it is about the millennials. Emerson, the transcendentalist, the philosopher, he said the journey is more important than the destination. Kevin Kelly, who was one of the founders of Wired, in fact, talks about how we don't want things, we want what those things allow us to do, enable us to do. So if efficiency is the internet and experience is a moving target, and if retail is defined by brand, it turns out that we're in an omni-channel branded world. And it turns out that Amazon, Zappos, Warby Parker are all opening stores to define who they are, to explain who they are, to make themselves accessible and interesting. And it turns out that those who have stores are trying to figure out how to close a lot of those stores. We have, it appears, too many stores, too many malls. Yet the companies that own those stores, who are talking to you about going online, generally are failing because their culture isn't an online culture. It's not a culture of the future. Walmart, as an extreme example, set up they've spent billions on an infrastructure, staff, Silicon Valley. They kept it away from Arkansas. You can't see any results. But it's a dilemma because on the other side, Zappos, Amazon, Zappos ended up inside Amazon, Net-a-Porter, it doesn't matter. None of them makes money. It may be that Amazon never makes money from selling online, retail goods. So you've got this picture that's muddy, and what you know, though, is one absolutely clear thing, which is that the future is about product and brand. The value is in the brand equity. And the person who can create brand and value can drive margin. Turns out that your smartphone has a huge margin to Apple. Turns out that the Apple stores can generate huge sales densities. And those stores will be golden as long as they have product to put in them. Otherwise, they'll be an anchor around the neck of Apple economically because they'll have a distribution infrastructure without the product to put in it. So finding that marriage between product and delivery and that woman, that's where it starts to get even more interesting. Peter Thiel says that you can't produce something that can be stolen or counterfeited or reproduced. You've got to have something that's identifiable, that's distinctive. He also said, I'm not sure as openly, he can't figure out retail 2.0, digital retail 2.0. Not will it exist, but how does it make money? But if you go to business schools in the US where they're graduating students, those students and funding sources are rushing towards marrying content, digital content with fashion, thinking about editorial impact, eating away at the classic print and media editorial, which, by the way, for fashion, still has yet to prove that they can move seamlessly online. So the present is confused. The future is very straightforward. The question is, where will those women be? And the question is, how will you, as a retailer, or someone who's responsible for editorial content, or someone who's responsible for marketing, how will you make that woman happy? How will you make that woman inspired? And it turns out that the gift of putting together the pieces to create a brand is complex and rare and very valuable as well. So when we think about retail, we think about destinations, we think about tourism, we think about hospitality, we think about experience. And our model for an experience that has transparency, low friction, distributed trust, convincing evidence, evidence-based, is actually the long-haul resort hospitality model. Why do people travel halfway around the world to do something they can do at home. The cost, the distance, the time. If the experience is great enough, you don't notice those things. That's the price you're happy to pay for something special. An experience is not only about, in fact, it's typically not about the price of what's delivered. It's the quality, it's the energy, it's the originality of what's delivered. And back to Peter Thiel, people can copy what you're doing, so you've got to keep reinventing in real time. Experience is everything. That's where we're headed. That's the retail of the future. And the dilemma for brands is, how do they deliver experience on a global basis, effectively on a commoditized basis? It's unresolved. It's complicated. You expect a commoditized experience online. That's the package that you're subscribing to. But when you walk into a store and you pay a high price point for something that's meant to be special, you have high expectations that are high and that are growing higher based on what you hear through your social network, through your distributed trust. So it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle, and there are actually very few leaders. What you have is, I think, winners in the past generation, which dominates the present. And the future is going to be exciting. It's going to be puzzling. And retail as we know it is in fact already over. So more demanding, more knowledgeable, customers that are more demanding, more knowledgeable, costs of execution that are higher, levels of complexity that are greater, profit margins that will become better for the things that really are the draw, because those will have the power, and that's what people will fight to have, the authenticity of great product, the authenticity of great experience. That picture actually is from a project we just opened in China. And the mission we gave our team was that what we build in China has to be better than what we do in Europe, because everyone who's been to that project is likely to have been to have visited or to have received information from those who have visited our projects in Europe. So we are in a global world, and the adventure is just beginning. Thank you.
So Scott, I just want to ask you about the Chinese consumer, because you have a phenomenal proportion of Chinese visitors to places like the UK who visit Bicester Village. What proportion is it now?
This past year, approximately 80% of the visitors from China who came to the UK, for example, went to Bicester Village.
Which is a pretty wow number. How do you let them know about this? Is this through marketing? Is this through word of mouth?
The most powerful marketing is the word of mouth. And so what we look to do is, you can't drive, Groucho Marx said sincerity is the most important thing. If you can fake sincerity, you've got it made. Authenticity is what drives the decision-making of these people who decide whether or not they're going to visit us while they're still in China, based on what they've heard from their sisters, their mothers, their friends. So we do try to be very accessible, but simply blasting out information on the internet hoping somebody will notice doesn't work.
So 4 out of 5 Chinese visitors to the UK go an hour and a half out of London to Bicester Village. Share with some of the other retailers here what it is that they're looking for when they're trying to spend money in Western Europe.
I think retail is today and will remain a lot about memories that link to experience. We have people who we don't have price-conscious people in a pure sense going to our villages. They're going for the experience of a day out. They're going for the experience of a discovery. They're going for a great merchandise mix, which you can't find in as comfortable a form at full price, because either it's a department store where you feel potentially internalized and overwhelmed, or the full price stores, because it is fashion, tend to be very aggressive and domineering. So we're trying to make fashion human and within reach, but people are really going, I think, so that when they return home, they have an emotional picture, just the way they have a picture on their smartphone, of this is what we did, this is what was fun.
Scott Malkin, thank you.
Thank you.